Being here. My name is Tanya Lubis, and I am the director of the Center for Culturally Responsive Practices here at EOU. This year is our 10th anniversary of this program, which is pretty exciting, and our guests have been here a couple of times, so we're happy to have them back. Tonight we're going to have a keynote address. I'm going to introduce our speakers momentarily, and to those online or who will watch it later, thank you for joining us as well. And that's why we're using the mics tonight, so just know that that's how sound gets to the YouTube channel. With that said, the Center for Culturally Responsive Practices is funded in part by a grant from the Educator Advancement Council and the Oregon Department of Education, and we have a generous grant through them, so we're excited to continue this programming with their help. I also want to thank my team, some of which are in the hall, but we also have Dean Rayette Newman, Chair Angela Vassencool, and then outside we have Taylor Smith, Kristen Johnson, and Christian Mendoza, who are our support folks. So we're going to start with a land acknowledgement. We humbly acknowledge the first peoples of this land Eastern Oregon University is upon, the Cayuse, Umatilla, Walla Walla, and Nez Perce people. We celebrate their traditions, languages, and stories. We acknowledge their continuing connection to this land, water, and community, and pay our respects to the original stewards of Northeastern Oregon. We recognize that land acknowledgements are not a substitute for actions in support of social justice initiatives, but rather a lifelong process toward learning more about the powerful heritage of the people, both living and past, whose land is being occupied in Oregon, and bearing witness to the truth of the past, present, and future impacts of white settler colonialism. With knowledge, we can face our state's history, embracing the discomfort and humility that often accompanies acknowledging historical truths, and renew our commitment to the developing educators who can help all students appreciate their roots and traditions. It's our collective responsibility to critically interrogate the past and current systems and to honor, protect, and sustain Indigenous people and their land. I now have the privilege of introducing our friends who are visiting us today. And just know that I just had some tutoring in Blackfeet language, so I'm learning, and we'll see how it goes. Dr. Kristen B. French, Asanaki Skapi Pikani, Blackfeet, Akni Grovan, Eastern Band Cherokee settler, has been a professor in the early childhood, elementary, and multilingual and cultural education department at Western Washington University. And my understanding is we probably have some Western Washington University students watching tonight, so hello. She's been there for 18 years and teaches courses in tribal sovereignty, native education and policy development, racial justice praxis, and multicultural education. Kristen is the mother of 2 amazing adult children, one of which is here tonight, and Charlie, who's not here, but someday he'll be part of the presentation team. When she's out of the office, you'll find her in her healing garden, kitchen, craft room, or reading Indigenous speculative fiction. Next to Kristen is Elizabeth Bragg. Ma'ats o ma staki, skapi, pikani, Blackfeet, Ani Grovan, Eastern Band Cherokee settler, is a worker-owner at Long Herring Farm, a multiracial rural workers co-op and certified organic farm with a commitment to growing food as if the lives of kids in our communities matter, located in Sauk-Suiattle, Stillaguamish and Upper Skagit lands. She holds a master's degree in law, development, and globalization. She's a student of the ideas that all organizing is a science fiction and archival research is time travel. And you'll find her at the farm or in the kitchen with speculative fiction audiobook playing in her ears when she's not on the farm. So with that, I want to welcome our guests and turn it over to them.
Thank you all so much. I'm so excited to be here. I'm a little nervous. I've never done this presentation before. It's been many years since I talked to a live audience of people. So I ask really humbly for your patience, and I'm so excited and just a total nerd for all of this. So I'm so grateful that you all are here and I can share some of these ideas with you. So this is an interactive presentation. So get out your phones, please. Ooh, yes, I saw an ooh face. This is the Mentimeter. And we're just gonna kick it right off with some audience feedback from you all. I see phones up still. Yes, while you're getting there. When I say the word apocalypse, what's one word that comes to mind? And you have multiple choices here. What's one word that comes to mind? And you can share more than one. Oh, yes. What a good one to start. Yeah. Yeah, zombie, good. That's going to come up later. Run, that'll come up. Doom, for sure. Yeah. Threatening. Ooh, someone said resistance. They're in the right place. Preparation. Yeah. Disaster. Aliens. We'll briefly touch on aliens. This is great. So we can keep rolling with that for sure. I jumped ahead of myself. So I'm Elizabeth. My Blackfeet name is Ma'ats Ochmatsta'aki, or Fine Victory Woman.
Hello, everyone. I'm Elizabeth's mom, and I just love that. I get to be in the gloriousness of my little sweet girl. I'm Oki Nixiguex, Nisto Natanako Asanaki. Hello, friends and relatives. My name is Kristen French, and also Asanaki, or Red Paint Woman.
So our hopeful outcome for this space is to offer some tools on how to navigate this current historical moment that we're living through from the wisdom of Native speculative fiction writers. I love that you all were so responsive to this. So what if we told you that for Indigenous people, the apocalypse has already happened and we're still here? Imagining worlds that center Indigenous lives equip us to explore alternative realities, challenge dominant narratives, and imagine a more just and equitable world. Tonight, we're not just talking about sci-fi with aliens and spaceships and time travel and Darth Vader and sexualized robots. We're imagining worlds without oppressive systems. Native American stories and histories help us imagine possibilities for individual and collective healing and life beyond survival. Indigenous speculative fiction can save us by creating futures that center Indigenous life and values. This current moment is calling us, oh, did I miss a Mentimeter? No, sorry. Native and non-Native people alike to recognize the United States as a site of continued violence and a nation committed to racial hierarchy with a vested interest in historical amnesia, as well as a site of resistance, strength, and kindness where communities of care and solidarities thrive. Stories and dreams connect us to identity, root us into value systems, and expand the limits of the futures that we believe are possible. So in this presentation, we're gonna focus on two authors of many different texts, Cherie Dimeline and Rebecca Roanhorse. This is Rebecca Roanhorse, and the two texts that we're gonna be speaking of specifically are her Six World series, which is Trail of Lightning and Storm of Locusts. And this is the beautiful Cherie Dimeline, who wrote Hunting by Stars and the book that we'll primarily talk about today, which is The Marrow Thieves. Hi, Cherie. My mom and I will also weave our own dreams of the future and stories of Thrivance into this presentation to show how Indigenous speculative fiction has saved us, is saving us, and will create futures that sustain future generations. Oh, okay. You ready to play a little bit? Yes, I heard a couple laughs.
We will guide you through the middle ground beyond light and shadow, darkness and back out again with Cherie Demeline. We will survive zombie apocalypse through science and superstition with Rebecca Roanhorse. And we will travel the fifth dimension between the greatest fears and the summit of knowledge with our own family history. Welcome to the dimension of the imagination. Welcome to Indigenous speculative fiction.
Well done, Mom. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. The quote up here is, I believe that all organizing is science fiction, that we are shaping the future we long for and have yet to experience. So why are we up here? Besides like me being a super speculative fiction nerd, I got nerd credentials, I got nerd receipts. In 2024, I listened to 27 works of speculative fiction on my free library app alone. That doesn't count my Audible and what I read on paper. So 17 of those books were written by, were written by authors, BIPOC authors. And some of those works are up here now. So I'm sharing a couple of my favorite texts, but I would love for you to get your Mentimeters out and share a few texts that you believe are speculative fiction. Favorite texts. What have you all read? What do you all like? What have you all watched? I have a slide of what I've watched too. While you're working on that, let's talk about what we mean when we say speculative fiction. Why not science fiction, fantasy, or horror? Speculative fiction is what Rod Serling, host of The Twilight Zone, would likely call the dimension of the imagination. Speculative fiction allows writers and audiences to explore alternative realities, challenge dominant narratives, and imagine more just and equitable worlds. For those of us whose ancestors have survived historical trauma, or were victims of oppressive systems, or are current victims now, like my ancestors, speculative fiction is, as Walida Amarisha says, as vital as air to our communities. She continues, science fiction, speculative fiction, fantasy, etc., is the only genre that allows us to step outside of the confines and rules of this society, this world, and to completely reimagine the present and the future. So what we have up here. Oh, read Severance, but with a question mark. Curious. Hunting by Stars, nice. Hunger Games, anything by Roanhorse. We already have a Roanhorse fan in here. Obelisk Gate, super cool. Great.
Oh, Sky Full of Elephants.
Oh, Venko, I know who wrote that.
Oh, me too.
These are great. Thank you for sharing. Oh, wrong one. So these are some of the great works of speculative fiction that I've read. What?
Gotta get pictures of the.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay, great. These are some more if anyone wants to take pictures. We can also share these back out, right, Tanya? Okay. And then these are some of the shows that I've watched. Yeah. Baby Yoda. So Indigenous speculative fiction can save us by creating futures that center Indigenous life and values. Oh, did I already read that? Oh my gosh. Thanks for being patient with me, y'all. So I know you all have been asking yourself, how did she manage to listen to 27 books? Well, I'm a farmer, grower, and landlubber, so I spend a lot of time doing menial tasks. I literally weed like miles and miles of carrots and salad greens, so I gotta listen to something, right? I listen to stories like Cherie Dimeline's Marrow Thieves, where main characters are on the run from a reinstated residential school in the not too distant future, and recruiters whose sole purpose is to harvest bone marrow from Indigenous peoples. In Dimeline's world, non-Native people have lost the ability to dream and are slowly being debilitated and dying because of their dreamlessness, until they come up with a horrifying antidote, creating a serum out of the harvested bone marrow of Indigenous people, elders, and children. So I know it's a heavy book, and we're going to talk about what that means to use speculative fiction as a tool for catharsis. But right now we're going to talk about a little bit about Thrivance, and we're going to talk a little bit about the farm. This is where I farm in the Upper Skagit Valley in the foothills of the North Cascades in Washington. And the farm is a certified organic farm. I named the farm in collaboration with my farm partner and partner after my grandma's great grandma, long-hairing woman, who we'll talk more about later in the presentation. My farm partner and fellow worker owner, Kelly, I love her connection. My connection is familial, and long-hairing woman's part of my history. But my farm partner has this beautiful perspective. She says, one of our core values as a farm is a commitment to change on a deeper scale of time. We are lucky to be farming right beneath Sauk Mountain, and when bumping into hard decisions or figuring out how to live out our values, I look to Sauk Mountain. What is the bigger picture? How can I place my actions in a deeper scale of time? We are here for the long hearing. Are we acting like it? So we're gonna propose that the farm is a site of speculative fiction as a practice, and that practice is land-based learning. So every year we host Native American Student Union of Western Washington University, where my mom is a faculty advisor, where we create a container where Indigenous and BIPOC students their lifeways can be centered. And Mom's gonna talk a little bit more about that. And I'm gonna show you some previews.
Okay, great. Oh, more beautiful farm. Elizabeth, what is this?
Matsi'iga pizza.
Little frog, cute. So, this relationship to the farm and our university is just really powerful. So when Elizabeth began farming in 2019 on this particular piece of land, we immediately started a relationship with our Native American Student Union. So we do seasonal rounds and learning. And so I love this slide. We've got Harmony and Kimberly here, and we've got a whole group of folks. We almost didn't make it in time to come here because we were processing nettles. And so here we are this is the kitchen. We don't have a longhouse yet, and so, there's Fred. Fred is very helpful in all aspects. His real name is Fry Bread, but we call him Fred for short. But you'll see this is just in the midst. We're just getting started in processing the nettles. So all of our students harvested and had this beautiful experience. If for any of the NASU folks, so much love to you all. They came to the farm on Saturday. Elizabeth is just an incredible host. We get an opportunity to be in community by the Skagit River, and was so beautifully reminded by Elizabeth that all 5 species of salmon are still living and running in the Skagit River, which is really powerful nowadays. So talk about a site of speculative fiction, a site of Thrivance. It's happening right there. So this was us on Saturday, everybody gathering around. Elizabeth gives us a wonderful overview of the farm and how some of our students have never harvested nettles before, so it's just an incredible opportunity to be on the land and be with one another. And ultimately, it is always healing for every single one of us. It's so powerful. And then we come back at the end of the day, back to this little spot on the river, and it was like gorgeous. You know, Washington, Oregon has a tendency to rain. It was almost 70 degrees. It was so beautiful. And we come back and we have lunch together and just kind of marinate in each other's awesomeness. So it's all about Thrivance. The harvested nettles we processed, we harvested them for our longhouse. We have a house of healing that's going to open in October 16th, which we've been waiting for since time immemorial. And we are doing a giveaway, so we wanted to make sure that we had nettles, which we will just also say a little bit about nettles. So this is a curriculum that we've shared before, and some of you, if you come to the workshop tomorrow, there's going to be some raffling for some of this curriculum. So I love this. This is our amazing Valerie Segrest, who's just a goddess of the universe, Muckleshoot, and does food sovereignty work. But she brings this, she's the one that kind of got us inspired to do nettles, because nettles are superfood. And so there's many beautiful stories about nettles representing building strength. And so it's this time in spring when it comes out after we've been hibernating, and we need to build our strength back up. And it's also just a beautiful metaphor for, us and our thriving. So nettles are nature's springtime superfood. They purify and nourish our body so that we can feel strong and energized. The tender shoots are cooked in a variety of ways. You can eat them like spinach and make pesto. And dried leaves make a tasty tea or seasoning. The sting of the nettle reminds us to be fully aware and protected. So here's our, this is our final group photo at the end of the day. Can you just see the joy on everyone's faces? It was just a perfect day. You want to say anything about Thrivance? Oh, Thrivance. So just ultimately, I would say Thrivance means thriving as resistance. So we talk a lot about survivance as Native people, that our survival is resistance. But now it's like, you know what? We need to be joyful. We need to have every day be a day that we are filled with love and joy. And that is the greatest resistance of all. So that's the short version.
Thanks, Mom. So, we just did this last weekend. Look at, oh my God, they are so happy. We were so happy. It was such a beautiful day. And so for at least this one afternoon, NASU students, the students who were at the farm, got to be the main characters in a story that completely revolves around Indigenous values, practices, and ways of knowing and being. But in Rebecca Roanhorse's 6th World series, in the books Trail of Lightning and Storm of Locusts, she's created this world. All the main characters are Dene. The world is Dene. In fact, the Navajo Nation, or Dinnitah, is one of the only land masses still standing. The rest of North America has been flooded due to human-caused climate catastrophe. There's been energy wars that have kind of ravaged the whole population, and the return of supernatural beings, including Mai and Nezhani, and other important figures who feature in Dene origin stories. Maggie Hosky, who's the main character, and other characters in the book survive traumatic experiences like the death of loved ones at the hands of witches or as victims of the energy wars, and only to find that those experiences have awakened clan powers inside of them that manifest as supernatural abilities like super speed or heightened senses or the ability to control metal. So this huge big water flooding cataclysm is barely in the rear view, but Maggie reflects that the Dene had already suffered their apocalypse over a century before. This wasn't our end, this was our rebirth. In both the Marrow Thieves novels and the 6th World series, the apocalyptic conditions are a direct result of human-caused catastrophe. Colonialism and environmental destruction sets the context to explore painful themes of displacement, resource exploitation, and the ongoing struggle for self-determination. These works also play with what it means for Indigenous people, our values and lifeways and practices to be centered in the future. The goal, as Kaina Elder Mike Brucehead says, is for our Blackfeet needs to be centered, for us to have the determination to dictate the terms of our political, social, and ecological futures. But as so many speculative fiction writers and practitioners suggest, you can't build a world that you haven't imagined. Okay. What if I told you that there had been a zombie apocalypse? What if I told you that you were the zombies? So we're gonna pull out your phones again because we're gonna do some Mentimeter. So turn to the person next to you and ruminate on this quote, and I'll put it back on the slide. But what do you think she means about zombie apocalypse? What if I told you that there already had been a zombie apocalypse and you were the zombies? So what do you think she's talking about? So turn, just like 2 minutes, just turn to the person next to you. I'll put the quote back on and then share any reflections you have in your Mentimeter.
I love this question. So good. Do they have access to the Mentimeter if it's not up on the?
Well, they're not supposed to be in the Mentimeter.
Okay. We're doing good on time. Are we? 'Cause it's got 30 minutes.
So why don't y'all finish your thoughts and we'll go to the Mentimeter. No pressure. You can keep talking, but the Mentimeter's up there if you have anything you want to share.
Such a great question.
Yeah, you're like the Thrivance piece. That's your purpose here.
Okay.
Living beyond survival.
Oh, good. Ooh.
Oh, so good. Okay, I'll leave it. You all can. I'll keep. We're gonna continue down this road, so don't. Because you can.
Yes.
Ooh, oh my gosh. Okay, keep going. I'm gonna leave it up for a minute. So, I love what. I think we have been trained in society to think a certain way without always realizing it. Yeah, that's oh, sorry. So we're going to talk about zombie apocalypse for a bit. and kind of use Rebecca Roanhorse's idea to explore some of the darker parts of history that are explored in Dimeline and Roanhorse's works. So the United States government, over many generations, attempted to destroy Indigenous ways of knowing and being. Some examples are establishing boarding schools, which is what Cherie Dimeline is talking about in The Marrow Thieves, banning religious practices, instituting the allotment system, and then the general attempted extermination of native nations and peoples to make land available to settlers. Rebecca Roanhorse, who wrote The Trail of Lightning, writes that Indigenous peoples stand with one foot in the darkness that ended our world and the other in a hope for our future as Indigenous people. It is from this apocalyptic in-between that the Indigenous voices in speculative fiction speak. In her Six Worlds series, Roanhorse makes a world that is completely Dene. After a climate change-induced flooding event, flooding is a central theme to Dene worldviews and stories that usher in new eras. We are left with a Dineta that is experiencing its rebirth, a new era of sovereignty, where people want to live. They want to live inside of Dineta rather than escape. So in an article, Roanhorse, in an article called Postcards from the Apocalypse, she draws on comparisons between settler colonialism and zombie apocalypse. She reflects that the violence of California's gold rush, when white settlers were encouraged to go out on hunting days to retrieve scalps and heads. These horrific acts were carried out over a period of 25 years, and the US occupation and settlement of California left the Indigenous population at only 30,000 people. It's a huge, just a huge disaster. And I've got some pictures up here. These are pictures, contemporary pictures of the California gold rush. This is a picture of ships that were abandoned in San Francisco Bay for people getting to the bay and then leaving all these ships so that they could get to the mines faster, they could get to the rivers faster. So this is a kind of dystopian scene, right? White settlers began, sustained, and then later just completely abandoned these mining towns. This is a picture of, they had to feed all these white settlers who ended up in these mining camps. And so they ended up harvesting the eggs of seabirds and then feeding those to these man camps. And they actually exterminated bird species this way, right? They stole all those eggs. This is a picture of just an abandoned valley. And then this one is one that really is kind of painful as someone who is a farmer to see. This is part of how the California rivers became so impassable for salmon. There was so much silt built up in the river that the salmon just couldn't swim upstream anymore. So Roanhorse paints this Romero-esque scene, right? These hunting days, this environmental destruction. A zombie apocalypse has already happened in California, and it also happened to my ancestor, long-hairing woman. Settler colonialism is a story about apocalypse, and it's also my family story. I'm gonna pass it to Mom to tell more.
So, the next slide, Elizabeth. So this quote is so powerful. Sometimes you risk everything for a life worth living, even if you're not the one that'll be alive to see it. And that is said multiple times in The Marrow Thieves and also in the Hunting by Stars in Cherie Dimeline's work. And so, you know, before I go into Long Herring Farm, Rebecca Roanhorse writes that documenting the truth of what it means to face the end of the world and survive, and then to keep surviving, even thriving, when the world keeps trying to kill you, it is, in a sense, the stuff of speculative fiction, but it's very much reality. And so earlier today, we shared our presentation, which is really a love letter to long-hairing women. And so again, we'll just share that these three beautiful women are with us here tonight. We believe that we bring our ancestors with us wherever we go. And so we would like to introduce you to Sandra Welch French, my mother and Elizabeth's grandmother, her grandmother, Ellen Welch, who is also a Sanaki. I was named after her. This is Long-Hairing Woman. And she was also known as Mary Jane Red Paint, which is also a Sanaki. That was, a Sanaki, Red Paint was her father's name. And so, this name has been passed down for multiple generations. But she was truly the survivor of the apocalypse. And Elizabeth and I, she has been our guiding light in the darkness. And we say that because she was, so I'll just share that Long-Hairing Woman saw the Sauk-Suiattle world disfigured by colonization. So that's the Blackfoot Confederacy. Blackfoot Confederacy consists of 4 bands: the Siksika, the Kainai, and the Amskapi, or the Piikani, which was crossed by the Canadian border. Used to be 3 nations, and now it's 4. And we're the Amskapi Piikani, the Southern Piikani. But she saw her world completely disfigured by colonization through disease, settler greed for land, destruction of plants and animals, and Blackfeet bodies, minds, and spirits. But she survived. She married and had 1 biological son, but her sorrow was not over, similar to Feather Woman, who we talked about earlier today. Her son was sent to Carlisle boarding school, one of the first group of Blackfoot youth to be sent there in 1892, I believe. Shortly after he returned home, they sent him back terminally ill, but he made it home to live out his few days with his mother. And if that wasn't enough, when her husband died, her allotment land, her Indian allotment land, was squatted on by multiple white homesteaders who were working with each other to yearly apply for her allotment land through the Homesteading Act, knowing that it was hers, and trying to clog the system to make it impossible for her. And in documents that we've read, they said that she had no right to the land because, number 1, she was a woman, and number 2, she was Native. Eventually, she lost the land to corrupt policies and practices. But Long-Hairing Woman trusted that her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren and her great-great-grandchildren would find a way to share these stories. And she had been through the most violent acts that humans can impose on each other, and yet she remained absolutely beautiful and compassionate with profound integrity, generosity, and humility. So by holding tightly to her language and her culture and her values and stories, she, for us, became the essence of Thrivance. And so just to quickly share that this is her allotment land, and earlier today we talked about how important to Blackfeet people, and I'd say Indigenous people in general, that land is critical to identity. And so you can imagine when folks are removed from their traditional homelands, the visceral pain, generational pain. This also here is, you see me and Elizabeth, but this is Elizabeth's brother, Charlie, who someday, as Tanya said, will be presenting with us. And he's in his first year of college, so he gets a pass this time. But his name is Ini Anista Soyis. He is Buffalo Calftail, after his great-grandfather. We wanted to show here, we talked earlier today about what we consider speculative fiction-esque, is one of our traditional stories of Feather Woman, who is a supernatural, amazing goddess of the universe. And this mountain in the background is called Feather Woman Mountain. So we know that that long-hairing woman could look out every day as she was gathering prairie turnips or medicines and look out to Feather Woman Mountain. And that landscape became a mnemonic device. So every day she could see Feather Woman Mountain, she was reminded of those stories, and she passed those stories on to her generations.
So we're going to talk now more about Cherie Dimeline's Marrow Thieves and the importance of dreams and stories and how they offer tools to have catharsis around this. We've hit you with some pretty dark history. And when we're talking about teaching about Indigenous history, we're talking about darkness, right? And so how are we gonna, what tools are we gonna use? And we're gonna get into that. I love this quote. This is a quote from Clark Whistler to Franz Boas, super famous anthropologist. Psychologically, these people are dream mad. And this was about the Blackfeet. So this is a quote from Dr. Rosalind LaPierre's work, Invisible Reality, Storytellers, Story Takers, and the Supernatural World. Her book focuses on a time in Blackfeet history when there was an anthropological and academic imperative to capture Indian stories, artifacts, and language. This was also a time when military contemporaries of these anthropologists like Franz Boas, Maslow, Whistler were kind of operating under this idea that the only good Indian is a dead one. And that's a direct quote from General Pratt. So these story takers had a little bit of a different view. They basically lamented that that whole nation's millions of Indigenous people were the inevitable sacrifice on the march of progress towards civilization. And we'll talk about more about this progress later. So I mentioned Boas, Maslow, Whistler, but back to dreams. Dreams, visions, the supernatural and mystery are an essential part of being a Blackfeet person. Experiences you cannot explain, dreams that call you to action are not metaphors and they're not parables. And dreams are the real and symbolic battleground in Cherie Dimeline's Marrow Thieves. In the books, these boarding schools, this new brand of boarding schools is an ugly amalgamation of religion, science, and the political. And they're sending hunting parties out to kidnap, incarcerate, and harvest bone marrow from the bodies of Indigenous people. In Dimeline's world, non-Native people have lost the ability to dream. The world is left in the wake of this dreamlessness pandemic, climate change, and ensuing social catastrophe, and it's grim. It's a grim scene. It's constantly raining, the storms are bigger and more dangerous, there's mass die-off of species, including humans, and then there's the mutant horrors of abandoned suburban sprawl. Packs of vigilante Karens take the streets. New Age vampire cults trying to drink the blood of Indigenous people. All this in an effort to dream. We know that boarding schools are real, and we know that they held horrors beyond comprehension. Psychological torture, sexual and physical abuse of children, all in the attempts to destroy the spiritual foundation of Native lifeways. And my mom and I know these facts in a different way because they're our family history.
So in this awesome photo, this is my mom, Elizabeth's grandma, and behind are my grandparents, Charlie and Violet, and of course my aunts and uncles, who I love tremendously. But in this image, you see a smiling, happy family. Of course, they were at a funeral. Funerals can be a really great, joyful place when you're a celebration of life, especially for Native folks. So, but you know, these two smiling, beautiful elders are survivors of boarding schools. My grandpa was a survivor of Haskell, and my grandmother a survivor of Chamawa here in Oregon.
So Dimmeline mentions this again and again in interviews when she talks about why she chose to write The Marrow Thieves. Why did she choose to focus on boarding school? And she talks a lot about her mentor, Lee Maracle, who told her about the importance of telling the darker parts of Native history. Maracle, her mentor, encouraged Dimmeline to lead her audience into the darkness, but to always leave at least a window where the light can shine in. Her advice wasn't about like the technical aspects of writing a good book, but rooted instead in care. As storytellers, we don't always know how vulnerable our audience might be. Dimmeline writes, I chose to examine this history and to tell this story because at the time we weren't having this bigger conversation about residential schools and their impact. And I'm going to try to always lead with Indigenous characters who are strong and familiar. They are the light. So it's these strong Indigenous characters who are the light that guide us out of this darkness. Dreams, as Dimmeline explains, are an essential part of how we make sense of our world, and that we need this safe space within ourselves to be able to process life. We see the consequences in her Marrow Thieves novels. The dreamless are driven mad. The dreamless are rendered as listless, unhinged, or completely devoid of consciousness. In short, the dreamless are the walking dead. Indigenous speculative fiction is a dreamscape where we can process our thoughts and experiences as Native people. Cherie ends her thought that dreams are a great metaphor for holding on to hope. So this is a quote from Leonard Weasel Traveler, who Mom and I took Blackfeet language classes from. And he said, "The elders don't believe in coincidence. You were meant to be here." And I want everyone to really absorb that. Everyone in the room, Native, non-Native, you were meant to be here. If we believe that strong Indigenous characters with dreams of Thrivance are the light, then we can apply this thinking not only to characters and stories and literature, but we can take this into our everyday life. We can take it into the classroom. We can take it into how we communicate with people and how we share these stories. Extend empathy and understanding to the experience of Native peoples from a strength-based perspective. As award-winning Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa Indian author Louise Erdrich says, every Native person is a survivor, an anomaly, a surprise on Earth. We were all slated for extinction before the march of progress, but surprise, we are the progress. So big middle finger to that Pratt guy. Learning my language from elders like Leonard Weasel Traveler has been a transformative experience for me. Revitalizing Indigenous ways of knowing and being are a theme throughout Indigenous speculative fiction. The elders don't believe in coincidence. You were meant to be here. Being Amskapi Pikani or Blackfeet is truly the best feeling. And part of this is this grounding in values and ways to show up in this world. And I'll share some with you all here. Kima pitsin, to have compassion and love for one another. Atsi moikan, to come from a place of humbleness. But this is also a word that we use when we pray. Ikakimat. This is a favorite in our family. We always talk about ikakimat. Be wise and persevere and continue to try hard. And that's not just like, oh, I guess I'll get up and I'll, do my dishes and I'll make the bed. This is like from your guts. This is the wellspring of your being. Try as hard as you can and continue to try, even when it's really difficult. So everyone in this audience is meant to be where you are. And although these values are rooted in Siket's Tapi ways of knowing and being, I'm sharing them tonight with you to take them into your own life. Because it may be, as Rebecca Roanhorse suggests, that Native people are rising from the apocalypse, folding the past into their present, into our present, and writing a future that is decidedly Indigenous. Marcia McKenzie and Eve Tuck write that Indigenous futurities don't erase people. Settler colonialism relies on the erasure of whole groups of people. But using women like long-hairing women as a source of strength and hope, a window of light on the darkest days. If she could live out those values of humility and compassion and love and ikakimat, despite all the horrors, shouldn't we? Shouldn't we try? Indigenous speculative fiction can save us by creating futures that center Indigenous life and values. This current moment is calling us to recognize the United States as a place of multiple truths, of horror and history, of zombie apocalypse, of survivors, as well as a site of resistance in the form of Thrivance, where Indigenous people are still here. As Dimmeline shares, we still have each other, and we hold on to what we can, but I can't ignore the darkness. So if it's there, I walk through it, holding on to the fact that I needed to bring light. Stories and dreams connect us to identity, root us into values, systems, and expand the limits of the futures that we believe are possible. In this presentation, oh, that's a spoiler. In this presentation, we took you to the fifth dimension with us, using Cherie Dimmeline and Rebecca Roanhorse as our guide. They showed us glimpses of a future that doesn't avoid the darkness, but instead gives us stories and dreams that strengthen us for the journey ahead. The tools in our Apocalypse Go bags are values like kindness, humility, and ikakimat, persevering and trying even when it's difficult. My mom and I shared our own dreams of the future in our work with NASU, and stories of Thrivance and how we try to live out our dreams of the future in the present by engaging Native students with land-based learning. So as we end and wrap it up, I'd love for you to share your thoughts with the group. If you believe that you were meant to be here, what kinds of futures do you want to see? If we have the power to build out the futures that we want to see, what would you like to see? And this is one word, please. A word cloud. A futurities word cloud. I was going to be so proud of us that we made it without crying, but I guess there's still like 3 or 4 minutes to go, so you all are so beautiful. So I want you to cast your minds back to about an hour ago. Do you remember the words that came up? Dead, run, zombie. You know, the apocalypse can look pretty grim when you're at the beginning. But if you've got these tools, right? You've got these values, you've got a purpose, then this is the future that we can build, right? A future of peace, community, acceptance, and care, and justice, unity. I love that. So we'll end with this, and then we can maybe have a question even. Oh my God. The supernatural, the fantastic, the dreamscape, the twilight zone, or the inconclusive bring hope and catharsis into stories of real and imagined horror, pain, and trauma. Indigenous speculative fiction creates worlds where Native people or sovereign nations are not only the center, we are the whole world. The beautiful thing about what Roanhorse called a decidedly Indigenous future is that it includes everyone in this room. And as my beautiful, we'll end with the words of my beautiful 99.9% zombie, I mean white, partner, Reed, said to me earlier this week, the future where we're not at the center is better for us. And that's the end. Oh, wait, that's not the end. Ki anitoi imitax, which means the dogs have separated and the story's over. And that's my dog, reading Cherie Dimmeline.
That was beautiful, perfectly timed. Well done. Thank you both so much for your time this evening, and thank you all for being here as well. One last announcement, which is also very important. This year, EOU is celebrating our 50th anniversary of the powwow, so we invite you all to please come May 16th and 17th. More information will be out soon, but it's an excellent opportunity to come together as a community and continue learning from one another. Thank you all. Have a great evening. Please take some more sweets on your way out. And they need the mic one more time.
You do this one.
No,
I'll
you
hold
go
it.
ahead.
No, I just talked for so long.
All right. We are so honored to come back here to EOU, and we've always been greeted with so much love and respect. And it's been really wonderful for Elizabeth and I to have this opportunity to nerd out. And every time we come here to speak, it's giving us an opportunity to explore our passions and be able to share them with you. So it's such a gift. And we couldn't do this without Tanya. Tanya has been our friend now for so long, and not just a friend like in our personal friendship, but in creating this relationship between our centers at Western Washington University and here. And we are so deeply grateful to this light bearer in the dark. And so we want to gift tonight a Blackfeet blanket from 8th Gen. Woo woo! To our beautiful Tanya. Thank you so much for being our family, our chosen family. Speech. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much.